In some old magazine or newspaper, I recollect a story of a man, let's call him Wakefield, who absented himself for a long time from his wife. The fact thus abstractly stated is not very uncommon, yet this is perhaps the strangest instance on record of matrimonial delinquency, and, moreover, as remarkable a freak as may be found in the whole list of human oddities. The wedded couple lived in London. The man, under pretense of going a journey, took lodgings in the next street to his own house, and there, unheard of by his wife or friends, and without the shadow of a reason for such self-banishment, dwelt upwards of 20 years. During that period, he beheld his home every day, and frequently the forlorn Mrs. Wakefield. And after so great a gap in his matrimonial felicity, when his death was reckoned certain, his estate settled, his name dismissed from memory, and his wife long ago resigned to her autumnal widowhood, he entered the door one evening quietly, as from a day's absence, and became a loving spouse till death. What sort of a man was Wakefield? He was now in the meridian of life. His matrimonial affections, never violent, were sobered into a calm, habitual sentiment. Of all husbands, he was likely to be the most constant, because a certain sluggishness would keep his heart at rest wherever it might be placed. Imagination, in the proper meaning of the term, made no part of Wakefield's gifts. Had his acquaintances been asked who was the man in London the surest to perform nothing today which should be remembered on the morrow, they would have thought of Wakefield. Only the wife of his bosom might have hesitated. She, without having analyzed his character, was partly aware of a quiet selfishness that had rusted into his inactive mind, and of what she called a little strangeness sometimes in the good man. Let us now imagine Wakefield bidding adieu to his wife. It is the dusk of an October evening. His equipment is a drab greatcoat, a hat covered with an oilcloth, top boots, an umbrella in one hand, and a small portmanteau in the other. He has informed Mrs. Wakefield that he is to take the night coach into the country. He tells her not to expect him positively by the return coach, nor to be alarmed should he tarry 3 or 4 days, but at all events to look for him at supper on Friday evening. Wakefield himself, be it considered, has no suspicion of what is before him. He holds out his hand, she gives her own, and meets his parting kiss in the matter-of-course way of a 10 years' matrimony. After the door has closed behind him, she perceives it thrust partly open, and a vision of her husband's face through the aperture, smiling on her, and gone in a moment. For the time, this little incident is dismissed without a thought, but long afterwards, when she has been more years a widow than a wife, that smile recurs and flickers across all her reminiscences of Wakefield's visage. But our business is with the husband. Let us follow close at his heels, therefore, until after several superfluous turns and doublings, we find him comfortably established by the far side of a small apartment previously bespoken. He is in the next street to his own, and at his journey's end. He can scarcely trust his good fortune in having got thither unperceived. He fancied a dozen busybodies had been watching him, and told his wife of the whole affair. Oh, poor Wakefield! Little knowest thou thine own insignificance in this great world. Go quietly to thy bed, foolish man, and on the morrow, if thou wilt be wise, get thee home to good Mrs. Wakefield, and tell her the truth. It is perilous to make a chasm in human affections, not that they gape so long and wide, but so quickly close again. In the morning, Wakefield rises earlier than usual and sets himself to consider what he really means to do. Such are his loose and rambling modes of thought that he has taken this very singular step with the consciousness of a purpose, indeed, but without being able to define it sufficiently for his own contemplation. Wakefield sifts his ideas, however, as minutely as he may, and finds himself curious to know the progress of matters at home, how his exemplary wife will endure her widowhood of a week, and, briefly, how the little sphere of creatures and circumstances in which he was a central object will be affected by his removal. He, at length, ventures out, partly resolving to cross the head of the street and send one hasty glance towards his forsaken domicile. Habit, for he is a man of habits, takes him by the hand and guides him wholly unaware to his own door, where, just at the critical moment, he is aroused by the scraping of his foot upon the step. "Wakefield, whither are you going?" At that instant, his fate was turning on the pivot. Little dreaming of the doom to which his first backward step devotes him, he hurries away, breathless with agitation, hitherto unfelt, and hardly dares turn his head at the distant corner. Wonderful escape! He gathers courage to pause and look homeward, but is perplexed with a sense of change about the familiar edifice, such as affects us all, when after a separation of months or years we again see some hill or lake or work of art with which we were friends of old. In Wakefield, the magic of a single night has wrought a similar transformation, because in that brief period a great moral change has been effected. But this is a secret from himself. So much for the commencement of this long whim-wham. After the initial conception and the stirring up of the man's sluggish temperament to put it in practice, the whole matter evolves itself in a natural train. We may suppose him, as a result of deep deliberation, buying a new wig of reddish hair and selecting sundry garments in a fashion unlike his customary suit of brown from a Jew's old clothes bag. The new system being now established, a retrograde movement to the old would be almost as difficult as the step that placed him in his unparalleled position. Furthermore, he is rendered obstinate by a sulkiness brought on by the inadequate sensation which he conceives to have been produced in the bosom of Mrs. Wakefield. He will not go back until she be frightened half to death. Well, twice nor thrice she has passed before his sight, each time with a heavier step, a paler cheek, and a more anxious brow, and in the third week of his non-appearance he detects a portent of evil entering the house in the guise of an apothecary. Next day the knocker is muffled. Dear woman, will she die? By this time Wakefield is excited to something like energy of feeling, but still lingers away from his wife's bedside, pleading with his conscience that she must not be disturbed at such a juncture. In the course of a few weeks she gradually recovers. The crisis is over. Her heart is sad, perhaps, but quiet. And let him return soon or late, it will never be feverish for him again. The dead have nearly as much chance of revisiting their earthly homes as the self-banished Wakefield. We must leave him for 10 years or so to haunt around his house without once crossing the threshold, and to be faithful to his wife with all the affection of which his heart is capable, while he is slowly fading out of hers. Now for a scene. Amid the throng of a London street, we distinguish a man, now waxing elderly, with few characteristics to attract careless observers, yet bearing in his whole aspect the handwriting of no common fate for such as we have skill to read it. He is meager, his low and narrow forehead is deeply wrinkled, his eyes small and lustreless, sometimes wander apprehensively about him, but oftener seem to look inward. Next, leaving him to sidle along the footwalk, cast your eyes in the opposite direction, where a portly female, considerably in the wane of life, with a prayer book in her hand, is proceeding to yonder church. Just as the lean man and well-conditioned woman are passing, a slight obstruction occurs and brings these two figures directly in contact. Their hands touch. The pressure of the crowd forces her bosom against his shoulder. They stand face to face, staring into each other's eyes. After 10 years' separation, thus Wakefield meets his wife. The throng eddies away and carries them asunder. The sober widow, resuming her former pace, proceeds to church, but pauses in the portal and throws a perplexed glance along the street. She passes in, however, opening her prayer book as she goes. And the man, with so wild a face that busy and selfish London stands to gaze after him, he hurries to his lodgings, bolts the door, and throws himself upon the bed. The latent feelings of years break out. All the miserable strangeness of his life is revealed to him at a glance. And he cries out passionately, "Wakefield, Wakefield, you are mad!" Perhaps he was so. He had contrived, or rather he had happened, to dissever himself from the world, to vanish, to give up his place and privileges with living men without being admitted among the dead. And still he would keep saying, "I shall soon go back," nor reflect that he had been saying so for 20 years. One evening, in the 20th year since he vanished, Wakefield is taking his customary walk towards the dwelling which he still calls his own. Pausing near the house, Wakefield discerns through the parlor windows of the second floor the red glow and the glimmer and fitful flash of a comfortable fire. At this instant, a shower chances to fall and is driven by the unmannerly gust full into Wakefield's face and bosom. Shall he stand, wet and shivering here, when his own hearth is a good fire to warm him, and his own wife will run to fetch the grey coat and small clothes which doubtless she has kept carefully in the closet of their bedchamber? No, Wakefield is no such fool. He ascends the steps heavily. For 20 years has stiffened his legs since he came down, but he knows it not. The door opens. As he passes in, we have a parting glimpse of his visage and recognize the crafty smile which was the precursor of the little joke that he has ever since been playing off at his wife's expense. We will not follow our friend across the threshold. He has left us much food for thought. Amid the seeming confusion of our mysterious world, individuals are so nicely adjusted to a system, and systems to one another and to a whole, that by stepping aside for a moment, a man exposes himself to a fearful risk of losing his place forever. Like Wakefield, he may become, as it were, the outcast of the universe.